I introduce you to Al Weed, farmer, statesman, and good friend.
I've been wanting to use this soapbox since they put it in. I thought, what a neat idea. And in fact, where we are this morning is actually very, very symbolic of the kind of campaign that we're finding is necessary for America in 2006. You know, the 5th District is a very conservative district, and that's always seen as a barrier to Democrats running successfully. But in fact, I think that this year, that conservatism is going to play in our favor dramatically, because conservatives are very, very nervous about what's happening in Washington. They're nervous about the massive deficits that this president and the complacent Congress or pliant Congress have voted, that is passing on the cost of government to our children and grandchildren. They are nervous about the ongoing war for which there is no plan to end it that anyone can see, when the costs are running completely out of hand. And they're nervous about the fact that their congressman has not stood up and said, wait a minute, this is not going right. They are nervous about the abridgment of freedoms. And all of us, I suspect, if we were to ask each of ourselves which part of the Bill of Rights is most dear to us, I think we would all have a different thing that matters to us. Religious freedom, freedom of the press, freedom to assemble, freedom of speech, freedom to be safe in our homes. All of us may have that particular one. But when we have a party in power, the Republican Party, and a president in power, when the Republican Party is not calling the president as he does things that abridge these freedoms, no one of our freedoms is safe when that party will not stand up to the president and say, wait a minute, it is not proper to be tapping phones. It is not proper now, as they're talking about, to use a 1917 World War I act to abridge the freedom of the press. It is not proper to push into secular laws religious views. These are things that conservatives understand. And the other thing they understand, and it's a very simple message, and it's high school civics for all of us. When the Constitution was written, the Founding Fathers understood if you didn't have control on the executive, you wouldn't get an imperial executive. They understood that, and we have all understood. What we're seeing now is that when the Congress refuses to control, refuses to stand up and do its job and say, wait a minute, Mr. President, this isn't right. We are leading toward an imperial presidency. And conservatives and liberals, Democrats and Republicans understand what the nature of the challenge is in front of us. And they understand that our country is on the wrong path. But they also understand that I'm running for Congress, not for president. And 435 people are running for Congress this year, not for president. So how do we change the direction of the country? We have to change the nature of the Congress. And they also understand you can't change something if you keep voting the same way you've been voting. So we are getting wonderful response to that. I was in Alta Vista yesterday afternoon, arguably the heart of conservative Campbell County, and people responded very quickly and understood it. In fact, I was getting some civics lessons from people who were way ahead of me on this. So I'm excited about the kind of campaign we're going to be able to run. It'll be a campaign run on issues, and fundamentally vital issues to the future of our country. This isn't partisan politics, folks. This is the future of America for ourselves and for our children. And people are responding to that, and I can't tell you how excited I am to be out there talking to them and understanding which way this country ought to go. And I'll make one last point. People often ask me, they ask you, they say, well, I'm just one person. You know, does my vote matter? Why should I vote? If we believe in the future of America, then each one of us has a personal obligation to make that vote. Don't worry about how anybody else is voting. You, as an American who cares about this country, must vote, and you must vote for change if you think we're going in the wrong direction. And that's the message we're going to carry door to door throughout this district for the next 6 months. I'll need all of your help to do it, but I'm excited about it. We've got good people. We're going to make it happen. So thank you very much.
Al, to what extent do you think the MZM relationship with Mr. Good is an issue in this campaign, or will be an issue?
Relationship is significant in that it points out that our formerly squeaky clean congressman is part of the corruption mess in Washington. It's part of the mess that has resolved from Congress, or resulted from Congress not doing its job. And not, I mean, we've had a moribund ethics committee. That's part of what the Congress is supposed to do, to police itself. They haven't been doing that. So Mr. Good can no longer say he's not part of that mess. He is. I don't plan to do much with it, Bob. I think the public is aware of what's going on. Every time Catherine Harris is mentioned in the news, she's linked with Mr. Good. Every time Brent Wilkes and Duke Cunningham are mentioned in the news, they're linked with Mr. Good. So I think that the press is going to do the job. I think the public is aware of what's going on. And it's just going to make it easier for me to put myself in a place where people say, I know him. He's an honest man. We have got no problems with him. I can vote for him, and I think that'll be important.
What do you think about Virgil Good's support of the war before the war happened, and his continuing support of the Bush positions on the war, and how do you square with that?
Well, I think I'm totally opposed to the war. I think we need to end the war now. And I think Mr. Good's position on the war, while it's been strongly in support of the president, is sort of thoughtless followership. He's not shown any leadership in any issues revolving around the war. And people I talk to, conservative and liberal around this district, are concerned about the war. And they're not hearing anything from their congressmen about what's happened there. They're not seeing any leadership on things like war profiteering, on things like torture in prisons. In fact, Mr. Good voted against the anti-torture bill, one of 110 wonderfully compliant congressmen to vote against a bill that ultimately passed. So I think people are concerned about that. And it's not just people standing here today in Charlottesville, but it's veterans. And you'd be surprised that someone who's worn the uniform of this country says, what the heck is going on over there? That question matters. And until Karl Rove announced his strategy, which is to say, this will be fun, folks. We've got to gather around the president. That's our congressional strategy. We've got to gather around the president because the president needs to win these midterm elections so his total career isn't down in tools. Well, that means they've got to back the war. And it will be interesting to see how they do that when they're looking at their titular leader with polls under 30% approval rates and saying, yeah, we got to gather around the president. That, well, I mean, that's, you can see where that might go, and I'm excited about how that might go. Any more questions? Yes. Okay.
How do people feel about the fact that we're going to have to raise the cap on the national debt to 10 trillion in order to cope with the national debt? Would you vote for raising the 10 trillion?
Well, you know, if we do nothing to control the deficit spending, we have to raise the cap. The financial markets would collapse if we didn't raise the cap. That's not a choice we have. But what Congress has a choice to do is reduce the deficit so we don't need to keep borrowing. And we ought to be looking at how we can overcome some of the deficit. You will remember, the last time we had a balanced budget was when Virgil Good was a Democrat. And we were paying down the debt. We were getting ahead of the debt that we had been leaving to our grandchildren. That, of course, has turned around completely. So we need a Congress that has the discipline to say, if we want to do it, folks, we got to pay for it. That means taxes. But, you know, it's hard to get people to get a sense of a $9 trillion, $10 trillion national debt. I mean, I don't have that much on my credit card, I think, but I haven't checked lately. But if you put it in terms that people can understand, for example, at $9 trillion, it is the equivalent of every one of us, man, woman, and child, including that little girl in the back, owing $150,000. That's like having a mortgage, but not having the house. And that gets across to people. They understand what that means.